I've been excited about dropping this motor here into the F100. My friend Lee over at Pro Street Development, he's come and made me some motor mounts, dropping this motor into the front end, and he's modified the steering rack a little bit here up in the front, so that motor's ready for me to do all the custom work that I need to do here on the Firewall. If you haven't seen it, the last episode I did was doing this front splitter here on this body, so go and catch up with that. But in this episode, I'm going to be going along with all the custom modifications that I've had to make up here in the front. It did have a Chevy motor in here. We've pulled the Chev out and chucked a Ford in here. It is a 7.3 litre Godzilla. It'll be packing a little bit of power, and it'll have a supercharger. So I don't have the actual supercharger, but I've got a 3D print of the backside. So I've got all my clearances and everything up in here, and I know when I get the real deal on and put it on, it's going to fit up really nice. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and we'll get into it. I've got my template for the center section of the Firewall. I'll lay that out on here, mark it out, give myself some material to clamp to, and then I'll hammer this center section in, give it a bit of a roll through the edges, give it a bit of a shrink where it rolls, because that material will need to come around. And then I can use that same template for where I'll roll the lip and it'll actually come in. So it'll be the backside bit as well. I can use the same template. So I'll lay this on, do a male, female, start hammering it in. this is the hammer form, and I have already hammered onto it and hammered it around and made the firewall. But I'll just explain what I'm doing here. I've got the cutout of where the recess will be that the motor drops back into. And around these edges, I've used a rounded router bit, and I've routed that edge around through there just to give it a bit of a curve so it curves in. And then I've done the same thing with the base plate that comes up the other way too. And then it all gets bolted in all the way around, so then that sheet metal sandwich between the bits of timber, it is 20mm MDF, and then that'll just stop it buckling while I hammer that through. I like to use a nylon hammer and hammer in the corners, and then use a chaser as well, nylon chaser, to get the main part through the straight bits wrapped around, and then nylon hammer into there, and then planishing hammer, and I'll also use a little steel block just to fine tune the straight bits, and then a hammer with a couple of curves in different angles that you can get in and really stretch that material down into these corners. And then when I take this off, there is areas that go through here that the flange needs to be shrunk and curved around here and around here, which flows with the firewall in the front. So those flanges get shrunk, and then the firewall is put back on the car now. It is on there, and then I do need to do the base plate as well. I'll do that base plate now, and then I'm just going to work into doing a transition point from the top of the firewall down into the section that I have made. We'll get into that transition panel and start making it. So there's a bit of a difference in the firewall through here. The firewall goes straight across. Reason for that is just the firewall to fit the motor had to come back quite a lot. So I've got this difference here, and this panel does actually have kind of like a bit of a curve. So I'm sort of thinking it kind of curves up this way. I might have a bit of a curve, drop down just a little bit through here, and then come have a roll like that roll there, rolling down in, tapering off to nothing into the corners, just for a bit of a transition point in here. So I'll make a panel and hopefully I like it. So this is the transition panel that I was making on this firewall, just from where it steps in up into where it comes up into this area here. And I've matched that curve in with that curve that is up in the top, giving it some sort of little bit of style instead of looking like it's just cut and shut. And then before I weld that in, I need to come through and do some marking out in here and do a little bit of beadwork up in here and here, because I will not get that into the bead roller if I weld that in. So I'll do all this work first, and then we'll start welding that into the firewall and keep continuing on with this firewall. Just a quick little test fit of the firewall in, just to see that everything's kind of fitting. So I went and shaped the shape I needed to put for this rear wall, and I just stretched those corners and then just bent it through here over a gas bottle, just adding a little bit of shape down here and a little bit in here, and did some little tabs so I could cleco that into place roughly where it needs to be. Clecoed all this, all the beadwork's all done up in here with these pressings that I wanted to put in. And then because of this and that has changed, the original gearbox tunnel isn't going to fit. So that is the original tunnel to cover the gearbox. So now I am going to go ahead and modify this. It's sitting a little bit higher, and the angle has changed a little bit too, because I've made some modifications in the side on this firewall as well, giving the owner more foot room. So now he's going to have a little bit more room to drive around, and we're going to have a bit more room on those pedals in there now. We'll continue with this gearbox cover and then make all the modifications that we want and then have that fitting up nicely. I'm just going to add a little bit of shape to this before putting it through the hammer. I just want to put a little bit in it and then add some shape in it this way when I run it through the hammer, just because I want to make this have a little bit more clearance here for the gearbox. So I'm going to make a little piece to sit in here, but I just want to add a bit of shape to it first, and then Then we'll run it through the hammer. Cool. I like to add a little bit of oil to this. It just helps it glide through the dies nicely when you're hammering. And then that way it won't grip up. So run it through and punch a bit of shape in there. The modifications that I needed to make to the gearbox tunnel is all done. So I've put a heap of shape in this and then kind of kept the original bolt area where it bolts in down in the bottom. Then that'll sit to the floor, and then I've tacked in this top piece, setting that angle to the rear of the firewall. And I've still got to do these little corner bits, but I want to weld that firewall in now, get that in place, and then I'll make this suit the firewall in this area and sort of make something in here that I want to do. But I did need to set this angle to what it needs to be and get this done. And then before I weld that back plate into the firewall, I needed to do that little step that goes in around here. And I've folded that edge over on this inside just to give it a bit more rigidity. It'll make it stronger and better for where that bolts in. So now I'm going to go into welding that firewall in and then go ahead and then finish this off and get this firewall looking like one piece. front end's all on, bolted up and fitting, and the old firewall used to curve out a little bit. That was in here, and that needed to come straight across. So there was room for the motor. And I've got this gap on the side down in through here where it needs to meet up with the firewall. So I'm going to make an infill panel that's just going to come up and follow that firewall nicely, and then do a return flange, put a section in and weld that in. That's a wrap on this episode. The front end's all fitted up, motor's in, and the firewall's complete now. So we can start moving on into some other areas on this car. And the workshop is full at the moment. So the next video should be aluminium reskin on this historic race car here. So nice little bit of alley work to come up. Tune in on the next episode and I'll catch you then. Cheers.